Jesus said, "I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled." My guess is that when you heard that, you didn't think about sweet birthday candles or a cozy campfire. Some good work done on behalf of us from other branches of the Christian community. I'd suppose that this statement lands harshly in our ears and in our hearts and in our imagination with all that scorched earth and unquenchable fire business and all the other scenes that go with that. And when you add what follows, division in our households, accusations of hypocrisy, this language certainly registers as hard and punitive. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I'm not going to stand up here and soft pedal this today. That would be disingenuous. I do want us to take a moment and consider what sort of announcement this is and why it's actually so hard to hear. Fire, of course, is one of the core elements understood since classical antiquity as a building block of the universe. There are myths in every culture about its arrival and its role. Fire is a necessary tool. The harnessing of fire is a major moment in human development. It is as crucial for creating as it is for destroying. For those who have survived house fires or bodily burns, there is nothing to compare to the loss and to that pain. And fire channeled in a lighthouse or a lantern is one of the most gracious gifts that we can stumble toward in the dark. And in Scripture, fire is just as complex. It consumes and it purifies. And fire is often a signifier of the presence of God. The burning bush called to Moses, the pillar of fire guided the Israelites, the tongues of flame lit on the disciples at Pentecost. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. There's a line earlier in Luke when Gabriel greets Mary, and Mary wonders what sort of greeting this might be. So I think it's fair for us to wonder what sort of proclamation this is today. Because as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, any answer to the question of what this fire means ultimately lies in our hearts as we listen. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. When I'm convinced of my righteousness and full up on righteous anger, I can welcome or even cheer the arrival of a Jesus who is going to burn it all down. I'm quick to point out all the little fires I'd like Jesus to start. I'd be glad to hand him some matches. But of course, my more honest self knows that there is plenty of chaff and straw to burn away in my own life. And that version of me hears this line from Jesus and cowers a little, or a lot, and then tries to do the interpretive dance of making him mean something else. Surely this is a metaphor. And it is. It is a metaphor for the blazing presence of God that lights up every corner of every room and of every heart, and that is good news as much as it's potentially bad news, or at least difficult and challenging news. This light, Jesus promises, will bring division. Pause with me, though, and consider that Jesus is not bringing conflict, or at least not conflict for conflict's sake, but rather, Jesus brings change. The presence of God lighting up our lives changes us. And what must follow change is movement in new directions. The impact of God fully arriving into our lives will mean the rearranging of our priorities, the rethinking of our choices, and our relationships. And that is enough, friends, to turn a household upside down. We will be divided the moment we take a step in a new direction toward Christ. And here's the other thing. However and whenever fire arrives in our lives as a tool, as welcome warmth in the cold, as destructive, as purifying, as a revealing agent of change, it's still fire. And we still must feel it. There's a moment in the novel, The Fault in Our Stars, when the boy Augustus says, "That's the thing about pain, it demands to be felt." Fire demands to be felt. Jesus wants to kindle a fire in the world that will be frightening and beautiful. He demands that we feel the presence of God in our lives, in our homes, on the earth. And in some ways, this will always necessarily hurt because change is so very hard and by definition disruptive to our comfortable, secure little lives. It doesn't hurt because God comes to bring pain for pain's sake, but because every choice we make in the light of God's presence, choices to follow Christ, choices to light up our lives, choices to burn things down, will mean turning toward one thing, turning away from another. And turning will be difficult and often painful. In a collection of stories from the so-named Desert Fathers and Mothers, an ancient repository of sayings and tales, we hear a story about a conversation between a novice and an elder. Abba Lot, the novice, went to Abba Joseph, the elder, and said to him, "Abba, as far as I can, I say my little office, I fast a little, I pray and meditate, I live in peace, and as far as I can, I purify my thoughts. What else can I do?" Then the old man stood up and stretched his hands toward heaven. His fingers became like 10 lamps of fire, and he said to him, "If you will, you can become all flame." In another translation, he says, "Why not become fire?" Why not, indeed? Perhaps you've heard the idea that we all contain the spark of the divine within us, that we hold a little bit of that flame within us, kindled by God and tended by us as we move through our journeys. If this is true, then part of our work is carrying that flame, knowing it can be dangerous and also creative. What might it look like to become all flame, to become fire? To me, this is the most difficult and uncomfortable of questions. You've met me. I'm not a firebrand. I can talk grandly, give me a microphone, okay. But like the novice, I enjoy my little practices and patterns and my creature comforts. I like a Jesus who comes to bring stories that are heartwarming, not incendiary. And if he's bringing purifying light, could he please direct that elsewhere? As I mentioned, I do have notes about where some of that light might go. But the wisest elders I know suggest both in their words and in their actions that more is possible. What would it be like if your life, my life, were lit up from within? The people I admire and adore are people whose lives burn brightly, all flame. Jesus didn't say, here's a little candle. He said, I come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. If you will, you can become all flame. So it almost doesn't matter if this fire is going to judge and destroy or illuminate and reveal, because it's going to be hard either way, friends. Being in the presence of God overwhelms because the presence of God is overwhelming, because this fire demands to be felt. This Jesus demands that we make choices and change our lives. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. And standing in that blazing light will change us even more when we see that we could become all flame, that we could burn with love and courage, that Jesus could shine in our hearts, that he wants nothing more and nothing less than to kindle a fire and set our lives ablaze